Well, hello everybody. I have my good friend BJ here with us to again continue our conversation on gaming and esports world and how we as believers can bring impact into that huge world that is maybe very secular, very lost, but they're in need of our Savior. And so, BJ, if you can just share with us a little bit about who you are, what do you do right now, how you got involved in this, it would be great.
Yeah, so my background across the board is varied. I am currently the head coach for the Greenville University esports team, um, and so I've been in that role for a year now as the head coach. I helped build the program, did all the proposals for it, and things like that. It's all real neat on our campus to actually start this. But my background, I've been a gamer, I mean, my whole life. I wasn't allowed to own an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Nintendo as a kid, no consoles, but we had a family computer, so I grew up on PC games. Um, and so I've got that background. I've worked in IT. I've coached a women's college soccer team. I've done sales and recruiting. I am a trained archaeologist. I've got a lot of things. But here at Greenville, when I came back to start working back in 2017, there seemed to be a need in the student body to kind of build this out. So I wanted to see how I could help with that. I became the staff advisor for the gaming club on campus, and we decided to kind of build esports, build it out, see how it functioned. Um, and so we're an official varsity program here, and it's going really well. So that's, yeah, a little bit, I guess, about my background.
That's amazing. That's so much. You're a very diverse. What is your favorite video game, and what is this? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, currently I play a lot of Apex Legends, but my background, I'll say this, my preferred genre, because I don't know if I can ever pick just a game that bar none's my favorite, but my genre is what we call RTS. So to help most people understand, so whereas I may be this head coach for esports, in the gaming world, there are different types of games, and I equate it to a track team. You've got your head track coach, but you have a sprint coach, a pole vault coach, a distance running coach, all the different facets, because those are different things that one person doesn't, it's hard to be an expert on all of those different things. Esports is kind of the same way. You have RTS, which stands for real time strategy, FPS, first person shooter, RPG, role playing games. So there are a lot of different genres of that. And I'm an RTS guy. So um, I play games like Age of Empires, StarCraft is the competitive scene for that stuff. Total War games, Civilizations. Those are my favorite types of games, I would say. And I mean, overall, that just gives me a good sense for strategy and tactical abilities within the video game world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know I didn't send you this question before, but you said you weren't allowed to own Xbox, PS4, or any
Yeah.
consoles. I think a lot of the people listening or viewing this interview, they do have this tension. I guess there's the relationship between their kids and them as parents.
Hmm.
And should my kids play video games? Should they not play video games? If they are, how? What would be some of the advice that you would give on balancing a parenting
Yeah,
relationship?
yeah. And so I grew up. My dad's a United Methodist pastor. So I grew up in the church. Very familiar with everything, being a leader in the church, leading youth groups, mentoring kids, and doing a lot of things. So, and we're actually helping a group of churches start an esports league. So, the balance between video games and kind of your kids, it's honestly, I relate it to movies. If you allow your kids to watch TV and movies, pay attention to the ratings. If they're watching G-rated movies now, look for video games that are rated E for everyone. If they're, PG or PG-13, that's where the T rating for video games comes in for teen. So pay attention to those kind of ratings, and that's what you'll want to kind of gauge your kid by. Um, a lot of family friendly games are out there where you as parents can play with your kids. That way you can introduce them to the video games, but also be there to kind of coach them through some things. Everybody, most people know Super Mario Brothers. That's a great starter game for most families. And you can all play together and do things like that. But there are, yeah, so pay attention to those ratings. But Nintendo is probably the most family friendly gaming console out there. So I would start with that if you're considering it. There are some games, that are violent and have blood content and things like that. So just be wary. If you need recommendations, I mean, anybody is welcome to reach out to us, and I can, you know, find games for you specifically that you're, wanting to introduce your kids to or things like that. Or if you have questions just about video games, definitely reach out to us. Um, but it really is, it's your family. It's the way you want them to approach things. There are a lot of mobile games on, your cell phones and things like that, and tablets to start introducing your kids to if you want to get them into video games. And feel free to use parental controls on things. I mean, they exist. So you don't have to, by allowing your kid to play video games or by getting involved, you don't have to jump into the deep end. Um, there are problems all across the gaming industry. But start off, with games you're comfortable with, and just go from there.
That's a great advice. I remember some of my favorite memories as a child and growing up as a teenager was playing FIFA with my dad.
Yeah.
It was so much fun, and it really got us connected, I think, and it was a great place to build a relationship. A couple of years ago, even I never even thought that esports had coaches. I was completely blind to that. But when Fortnite came out, I started seeing on the news that parents are hiring coaches and paying lots of money
Gosh, yeah.
to these coaches to train their children how to play Fortnite. Which was I was like, no way, that's well, I was like, that's awesome and that's crazy. Like, I didn't know, but now I understand a little more why there's a need for coaches in this space and how actually um, it's strategic
Yeah.
to have coaches. So maybe you can explain to us, why did you become a coach? Why are you passionate about coaching? Um,
Yeah. I have honestly, I've just in the university environment, I've always been passionate about student needs, whether that's from the front end and an admission standpoint from teaching courses as an adjunct faculty member, residence life. Like, students on university campuses have such a diverse need, and I even when I was in college, I mean, video games were just a huge part of who you were in college and what you did. I mean, it's a great social atmosphere to play with other people. And so, um, seeing that need and seeing that's what the students here wanted, I let the students kind of guide that process. But I really enjoy mentoring students, being allowed to kind of push them to their potential, whether that be through video games in our program or streaming or actually game design or allowing them to use our computers for programming. But they've all got specific skills, and this is the best way that I can help those kids reach their potential.
so what is one of your favorite moments as a coach?
I mean, honestly, the best moment you can have for a brand new program, in my opinion, is just that seeing your team react to their first win. Whether you've lost before or you've just practiced as a brand new team and coming out of that and seeing that work pay off for those students I mean, there's not moments that are much better than that, because they worked hard. That they've come together to overcome some, they've never met each other. They've come to campus and new team, brand new students. And so to see them develop those relationships and build something off of that and to win one of their first matches is a really powerful moment.
That is, what has been maybe a sad moment. I'm a coach. I've been coaching soccer for a few years now, and so I have lots of sad moments. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think most coaches have lots of sad moments. Do you have one kind of where you were just like, man, I wish this was a little different today?
Yeah, honestly, it's funny because it's kind of in the same arena of the competitive scene for esports. The saddest thing, and it's specific to esports, is that in these tournaments, you do a qualifying round, like you would in other sports, but you only play the one match to enter the tournament. And if you lose, you're just done. So to practice for a couple months and then play and lose, and your season's over. And well, that was that was fast. you know you get it maybe another chance in the spring or maybe a different semester, but you've worked really hard, and to play that match and then just go, oh my gosh, like we worked so hard and just I mean, it's just sad.
That's like the saddest. I don't think there's maybe not another sport where you have so like there's not a lot of chances where you can just play
Yeah.
every weekend. and progress, but you do work hard. So, I think a lot of people listening are coaches or familiar with coaches that are working in your just traditional sports. So how would you say, what is the difference in coaching in esports world versus traditional sports? I don't know, maybe you do guys, in traditional sports, there's so many different aspects of fitness, strategy, working out plays together, all these different things, working on your technique skills. How does that look like in the esports world?
Yeah, 100% different. And I think the issue you face now is that a lot of gamers, they become a coach at 25 here for these programs, and they just finished gaming themselves. They've never actually coached a team before in regular sports. And I think having some coaching or leadership experience in any capacity helps, but a lot of them don't have it, and then they go coach these teams, and they actually just, I mean, basically your coach is just a fellow gamer, and they just play with you and don't really, they're not there to guide or to lead, more so they're just there to continue playing video games. So
Okay.
that's a huge issue right now. And but the way it's different is that there is no structure. There's no set way of coaching. There's no player's manual. There's no playbook. Honestly, every game is developing and it changes year to year. I mean, so you could imagine with, I don't know, yeah, with a sport like soccer, if year to year they downloaded a patch and updated all the characters and all the players, and oh my gosh, this year the turf is completely different and it changes every single year, and the goal size changes every single year, and the amount of players on the field changes every single year, and you have to keep adapting. So as a coach, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's never ending. On the flip side, there's the players themselves, and whether they've played on an organized sports team for other sports or not, a lot of these students, I mean, they're just gamers. They come and they've played at their house, they may have played with friends, but they've never been a part of a team. So you're taking individuals that have never done something like this, putting them together. So you have to be adaptive year to year. You have to figure out how to get these students who've never played together to work together, and things. And so there is a lot of dynamics in the esports world because there's no set structure yet. It's all built out in the other sports, but there's nothing built for esports. So trying to build that and build some structure for your own program and building your program while trying to coach and keep up with all the updates and things like that, it's just different. I don't know.
How does your practice, like when your team comes together to practice, and I assume you guys have probably a few teams because
Yeah.
genres and things like that. What does that look like? For example, when I coach, we have a warm up where we're warming up, dynamic stretching
Right.
things. We move into little exercises, working on technical things, then into small sided games, then into actual game where they apply all of it. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so typically, like you would in another sport, there's some warm up. Everybody shows up for practice. You sit down, you jump into the game together. You just play a few rounds. You warm up. You get your fingers ready, and things like that. There's a lot of hand-eye coordination. I know people don't think about that, but there really is. And so to warm up is a big deal. So you warm up, and typically once we've played a few rounds and what we call arcade mode, even where you're not playing competitive matches, but there are different versions of the game that you can play through, different challenges and things like that. So to warm up in those kind of modes, and then typically we jump in and we'll play as a team competitive matches against other teams, other groups of players. And the challenge is that it's not always, I guess you think of it as scrimmaging in most other sports. Basically, in esports, you call them scrims. You just shorten it. It's not a scrimmage, it's a scrim. So you warm up and then you immediately jump into scrims. There's and a lot of time it's different too because you're not scrimmaging real teams. A lot of the time, you're scrimmaging groups of players that are playing privately. So you do find other teams that you'll play, but basically you jump into the game, you click play, and you're loaded into a queue where you wait, and whoever ends up loading in on the other end is who you play against. They could be really good, they could be really bad. So your level of practice actually varies quite a bit. Um, so the goal, of course, would to be to build out a structure where that can change a little bit. but it's up to the game developers, which is what we're at the mercy of. You have to play the way the game developers have built it out. Whether that will change in the future, I don't know. But typically, practice is a warm up, and then you jump immediately into scrims.
That's uh, at least you get a lot of playing time.
You
That's
get a lot of playing time.
And do you require as a coach? Last week I talked to Stefano, and he was required when he was a pro player. He would practice with this team for like 4 to 6 hours, and then he was required to play by himself. How does that work in college setting?
Yeah. So obviously, it's hard to track anybody's playtime outside of practice. And we're not about to track all their phones and their computers all the time to figure out what they're doing. That's not happening. There are, universities, and this is a danger in esports. Without a structure, without a governing body, players get abused. 100% they get abused. So we do need some kind of governance. Obviously, usually when that comes in, the money situation changes. People make a lot of money off of esports, so who knows how that will look. But for practicing, I want my teams to be flexible. This is a university environment. They've got campus jobs, they've got homework, they've got classes. This is not the only thing they do, and a lot of esports teams treat it like the only thing they do is esports. So they'll require 20 hours of team practice a week and then another 20 hours outside of practice. And you say that's 40 hours a week. That's somebody's full-time job. You can't do that to a kid. And then you get burned out and nobody wants to play with your games anymore. They don't want to join your team. So we want to avoid that. And as a coach, I feel for these students. So I only require 10 extra hours outside of team practice.
How many hours do you guys practice?
So in season, 3 team practices a week. In the off season, 1 to 2, depending on what the students are involved in.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. How many different teams do you guys have?
A lot, which is rare for a brand new program.
Yeah.
New programs usually have 1, maybe 2 teams that they start off with. But as a new program, we just have such a variety of students and players, and trying to recruit on top of that for a new program. If you don't offer a variety, you're competing with, Division 1 schools. Our school's a Division 3, so we are automatically at odds with these other schools who can offer a lot more. But we have teams for Apex, for Overwatch, for League of Legends. We're starting Call of Duty and Madden, hopefully FIFA, 2K, Fortnite, Rocket League, Super Smash Bros. I was like, there's more. Super Smash Bros. Both Ultimate and Melee. So that's why, again, I equate it to, it's like track or something like that, where there's multiple events going on. And the ideal structure for esports to be built out would be to have a director on top, like an athletic director, than to have a coach per team. But until your program is big enough or your school can support that, you got to do what you can.
Yeah, that's interesting. So are you playing now a role of a coach, a program director?
Oh yeah, yeah.
All the teams.
It's building it. So we're doing that. We're working on building a new esports space. I'm working with a group of churches and the parks department here in our local community to build separate esports leagues out for that. We're looking at hosting summer camps. There is so much involved on top of streaming and doing those kind of things. There's a lot that goes into it, and people don't realize that.
That is crazy. So as somebody who's working with college students, maybe you can explain to us, we kind of know about college sports. Well, some of us, in some countries, college sports mean nothing.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in Uzbekistan where there's no such thing as college sports.
Right.
But then we look at countries like the United States, some countries in Europe, and then even Southeast Asia, China, where college sports are beginning to really develop. And in the United States specifically, where colleges are making millions of dollars.
Oh man, yeah.
Basketball tournaments, football tournaments, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we understand a little bit of the traditional way of working with college students in the sports world. How does that look like for you to recruit players, college players? How does it, can you go into maybe a detail of what does a collegiate esports player look like? What is their mindset? Are they extremely competitive, or are they a little more laid back? Are they willing to give everything that they got? Sometimes I look at these basketball players who are literally, all they do is they don't care about school. They don't care about anything. It's like, I got to get and practice basketball the whole day, every day. What does that look like in the esports world?
Yeah, definitely. First and foremost, for me, I believe in education. So I I have probably the most strict academic requirements for my team out of most any program. Um, I want you to learn, but for esports in general, especially these college scenes, you do get a variety of players. You get players that come in, they want to be part of a team, and they just kind of like casual playing. You do get the really competitive ones. The problem that you encounter across the board with esports players is a lack of patience. So I would say if there's one attribute, they don't want to wait. They don't like building out a new team. They don't like having to wait to win because you might have this really, really, really good player. I mean, they're phenomenal at the game, but they are terrible at teamwork. So your team is never going to win. And for that player, it drives them absolutely insane. They are used to playing by themselves and winning when they play, and to come and to be a part of a team environment where they can't win right off the bat because they don't have any teamwork skills drives them insane, which you don't see a lot in other sports because there is a structure. So I would say that's one of the most common attributes you see in gamers is that lack of patience, that want. And you might say, well, that's technology driven, the lack of patience, the wanting something immediately. But as we enter this new realm of esports, and collegiate esports has only been around for 5 or 6 years at most, so it's new, and we have to develop that set of guidelines into it.
Wow. It is, it's crazy to have something so brand new, like trying to establish it in college, but knowing that every year the scene changes because of the updates, because
Yep.
developers, you never know what game will come out next year and become extremely popular, kind of what happened
Mhm.
with Fortnite a few years ago, and how often the game changes. Like for me, I play FIFA, I played tournaments on the weekends and things like that. Not good, but the game, even FIFA, changes every month. There's an update
Yeah.
that requires you to play around and think, oh, this like team formation no longer works in this new update. These type of players, soccer players who were good, you know, in the last update with their heads and like they could score lots of headers, or you can no longer score headers. It's a completely different game month
Yeah.
to month. And so to me, it's like you guys are in the world that is so different, that is so hard to understand. And I can't even imagine the amount of pressure that players have every year to perform at a constant level. And I think one of the questions I just popped into my head is why most of the time we see professional, probably players in the esports world, they start out maybe 16 years old and they retire at age of 24 to 25. Why not, so why don't they play till they're 30, till they're 35, 40? Uh,
Yeah, and an abuse in the system. If you take something and you build it out um, without any guidelines, it tends to abuse. I mean, I'm like I said, I do archaeology, so I look at history when I look at these things, and you could see in the United States, looking at our economic history, anytime the lower classes, industry booms in a certain sector, they're taken advantage of, and then you get guidelines that help them out a little bit, and sometimes those guidelines work, sometimes they don't. You get a whole slew of issues, but esports is that right now. The bottom tier is being taken advantage of for the bottom dollar. So these players, they start out, and they think, oh my gosh, I'm in high school, I'm entering these tournaments, I'm winning, I'm doing so well, I'm making a lot of money. Then they get picked up by a team, skip college, skip the university, but they're being pressured to play so many hours. I mean, could you obviously we work 8 hours a day in the United States typically. Doing that, but playing the same game, not playing varied games or different games, playing the exact same game, or for traditional sports, can you imagine playing soccer 8 hours a day for 5 days in a row?
yeah,
Like, oh my gosh, you can't do that. Like
yeah,
there's a huge level of burnout. And so by the time you hit that 24, 25, there's a 16-year-old that has come along that's fresh, that's got more energy, and they tend to swap you out. They want the fresh eyes. That person has played with the newer game updates longer than you have, so they want that person to come in and take your spot. um, and there are other things that go into that, and whether you just get tired of playing the game, or maybe you've thought, oh, I've been playing video games long enough, what other career choice do I want out there? So there's some other things, but honestly, you just see a lot of burnout.
yeah. It is true. And it's interesting to view like the average gamer age is so it's like mid 30s, but then
Yeah.
your like pro players, they're so much younger.
Yeah.
Um, couple more questions that I would want to ask. We've touched before, and I've spoke to Stefano about it, and in other places about streaming. I think for a lot of people, it's hard to
Yeah.
understand why are people watching another person play video games, whether it's on Twitch or even on YouTube. Like some of these streamers upload a YouTube video of them playing yesterday and has millions of views. Why do you
Yeah.
think people are so? I mean, this younger generation is so interested in just watching people play video games.
Yeah, and I see that conundrum. I see people's faces, and I'll be 30 this year, and I'm already going. I don't even myself watch a lot of people play video games, with full-time jobs and families to look after and things like that. There's not enough time. If as a coach, I need to practice more than I watch other people, so my skills are at least somewhat on par with some of my players. So there's not enough hours in the day. But these people, rather than watching traditional TV, and we say, well, we're just watching people act on TV and TV shows and movies. They're playing out a role in real life. It's kind of the same for gamers. You're watching somebody else play this role, play this character, and they all have their own unique styles. A lot of it can be educational. You're, watching. I mean, it's like watching professional sports in that sense. You're watching those players. Oh my gosh, if you see a pro athlete do a new trick, you want to mimic that, you do that. Same thing. You're looking for play styles. You're looking for different ways to take the game to the next level. Maybe this player, this streamer you're watching did something you didn't know existed in the game yet, or they found, most commonly, maybe they found a glitch and you want to find that glitch too, and you want to expose that and do things with it. There's a lot of variations. And you want to see how other people play the game. And I think there's just an overall fascination with how other people do things different from you. And there's that aspect, I guess I would say. But the other aspect is the community. You are in your house playing video games. A lot of time you might be doing it by yourself. This gives you an outlet to communicate and chat with other people that are playing your game or into the same things that you are in, kind of like social media.
I personally, I love watching streamers, especially if I'm playing. It's always nice somebody playing the same game, talking about it, really interacting
Mm-hmm.
with you in a way, because they are talking to you at the same time the whole time. And so I personally love streamers and what they do. And the last two questions are, you're a Christian coach in probably one of the most secular worlds or segments of our society, and a lot of times where for Christians, it's extremely hard to be open about their faith, and it requires a lot of courage. So how does it feel being a Christian coach in a mostly secular environment? And also, how can believers serve esports/gaming community?
Yeah, I mean, and it's definitely different, even from that recruiting standpoint, because it's such a secular environment. At a Christian school, you get a lot of non-Christians that will apply to your program. So inviting them in and catering to both Christians and non-Christians in a way that you've brought them into this environment that is Christian, but you also don't want to pressure them in that same sense to you have to be this certain person to be here. So there's a dynamic you have to work with there in reaching all different kinds of people. But gaming it's toxic. There's a lot of mean people. It's changing a little bit, but it's when you don't have consequences for your actions, you tend to just push everything to the limit. And that's what happened with gaming. There's no consequences for what you say in game. You can say whatever you want to someone else. Now, of course, there's reporting features. But the problem with most video game developers is that when they have a reporting feature, they don't take it seriously. So it stems from the developers and the marketers of those video games. And a lot of that is that those that are the heads of these companies and that develop these video games, they themselves were toxic gamers. They went through the system, they came out on top, and it's very male driven. You get a lot of men who have never had many consequences for their actions before, never been taught a lot of rules and just etiquette and things like that, and common courtesy and things like that. And then they get out there, they perpetuate that, then they develop a game that perpetuates that. And women, it's not very diverse. There's not a lot of women involved in esports or video game development. So you just kind of play into that very male dominated lack of rules culture. and that's what you get. You get a very toxic culture. And so as a Christian, it can be hard to express your faith in that regard, and to reach people. But, as Christ would say, let your actions speak for you. Um, and so to start bringing sportsmanship into esports is how that will change, to build out that structure ourselves, and not to just overly evangelize to these people, because that's not going to break through, but to show them based on your actions and how you treat other people, even in the competitive, like with other universities. Like the esports teams will try to cheat to win. They will try to record a forfeit, for example. And if they record a forfeit, and you've showed up on time, but you don't go to the tournament website and battle that forfeit or challenge that, then even if you play your match, the tournament website records it as a forfeit and you're done. So they will intentionally try to cheat to win. And I'm like, other sports, there's at least that idea of, I want to at least beat you. I want to compete with you and win in that way, to prove that you've worked hard and that your work is paid off. In esports, that doesn't exist. Gamers have not traditionally had to work hard to do those things. And so you see a lot of that. But I think bringing sportsmanship, and being gamers of character and things like that is what will help change that from kind of a grassroots movement.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you so much again for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And
Yeah,
may
not a
God
problem.
continue to bless you. I know how stressful it is being coach, program director, a mentor, everything all at once, trying to build even, leagues now in the communities. And so I know that God will bless you tremendously. So thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time.
thanks for having me. And if anybody has any questions, let me know.
Sounds good.